So we begin our journey of aging with a question that mankind has asked since we've had mankind, and that is, what's the meaning of life? And we continue to ask that question and get lots of different answers. And the interesting piece is that there is no one right answer, but each one of us has our own individual take on it. So, a couple of the questions that we're going to be looking at this semester is what old age has from the standpoint of a meaning to society, and every society seems to have a different take on that. And also, we're going to look at how individual people actually experience their lives as a meaningful experience as they age. Leisure activities play a huge role in later life, especially in this country, and often replaces what we did for work. Um, and it's something that we kind of do for its own sake. There's no real end in itself in many ways. I mean, I think people who take up different sports or jump out of airplanes, there's a meaning and lots of things attached to that, and one of them is a successful landing. So I think that there is more than just its own sake. I think there's a great deal of satisfaction that perhaps this lady experienced when she did have a successful landing. And I think that it's very easy to put older adults into a box as they're all old, they drive slowly, they are grumpy, so forth. So we're going to be looking at a lot of these stereotypes over the course of the semester. Um, and I think you'll learn or discover that older adults are probably more diverse than any other group because they've had more experiences, more time to look at aspects of life and take different positions. And we're also finding that leisure activities at the end of work are really determined in great deal by your education and the amount of income or money you've been able to set aside for this retirement time. And so you can end up like these folks, probably models, but on a nice boat, or you can end up sitting on your couch watching TV 48 hours a week, which is what the average American retiree does in this country now, based on, I think, on the income and to a lesser degree education. Religion seems to, research suggests that people start to think more about religion as they go through life. And 75% say it's more important or very important in their lives. Um, I'm not sure that it's the religion so much. We'll talk about it in a second. Um, but I think that the involvement with religion is also an involvement with other people, and that socialization may be just as important as the actual religious activities. Not really sure. I haven't seen much research that suggests that the religious piece is more important than the social piece. So we'll take a look at some of that stuff as well. There is a correlation definitely between well-being and religious beliefs among a lot of older adults. Um, and one of the things that older adults have to learn as they do age is how to cope with loss. So loss takes a lot of different looks. One of them would be loss of a spouse. Another would be loss of a job, loss of function. You can't run like you used to or climb stairs like you used to. Um, and someday somebody's going to come along and take the keys away, and so you're going to lose that privilege of driving. So these are all losses that older adults deal with virtually every day. Um, we also find that a lot of people definitely change their outlook on faith and spirituality after age 50 or so. There are a number of dimensions of spiritual well-being that we will discuss in this first week or so. And uh, I think old age is really a good way of discovering the meaning of life for the individual. And by that I mean, what things have they done in their lives as they have an opportunity to reflect on them that have made a difference, that have been meaningful to them. And so also, as older adults, we tend to, and I put myself in that category, we tend to develop these thoughts individually rather than in some sort of a group setting or conforming to what society may expect of us. When I was younger, I wanted to be like everybody else. I didn't want to be different because it was there were consequences to trying to be different. And now, when I'm older, I really don't think too much about that. And society's also changed, so there are a lot of people out there who don't conform to what we used to call social norms. So we're going to look at this from the standpoint of an entire life course, not just older adults. And part of what you'll be able to get involved with, I think, is to interview an older adult at some point later in the semester, see what the history of that older adult is, and then be able to take a snapshot of how they are now and make the connection between their lives, their experiences, their outlooks, and how they've turned out the day you talk to them. It's a number of readings on each of these chapters, and how they suggest you have a look at them. This first one by Simone here is kind of an interesting notion that can I become someone different while at the same time still remaining who I am? And I suspect that that's probably true. Not so easily defined. What parts do you still hold on to? All the research shows that one of the things that does not change as we age is personality. So if you run into a grumpy old person, odds are pretty good that they were a grumpy young person at one point. So that's very interesting notion that we will kind of kick around a little bit. The next reading talks about staying engaged and involved in society as we age. And a few years ago, not too many years ago, it was kind of considered, okay, Harry's 65, so we'll retire him on Friday, and Monday morning Harry wakes up and is not quite sure what to do with himself. I mean, he may be happy for a few months, play some golf, do some traveling, but the meaning of what he was doing in his job and the rest of his life, maybe raising kids, is not there. And it leaves kind of a vacuum that we try to fill in different ways. So that too is changing with what society is changing as well. So there's a lot of people kicking around the idea of successful aging. It can be called optimal aging. There's a number of other ways to describe this process. So we're going to be asking you to think about what your old age looks like in an ideal situation. and be going to ask you to be realistic about it and what other possibilities there are. One thing I do know is that successful aging absolutely includes a smile. Fourth reading, Measure of My Days, deals with Maxwell's interesting comment here that old age is a time of heroic helplessness and a place of fierce energy is a real contradiction, and yet I suspect that both of those possibilities can exist in the same person. I'm still kind of working that out for myself. Something we'll get to think about and talk about. And then finally, we need to decide whether or not old age is simply a continuation of what we were as people in the middle of our lives in midlife. By then, we've established our value system and kind of have a moral compass pretty much pointing in a similar direction through most of our life. Or does there call for a change as we do grow older? We're staying on this planet a lot longer than we used to. And so right now we have the stages of development of childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. And there are a lot of people out there calling for an additional level called elderhood. And I suspect that will take its place in our lexicon on how we just talk about ourselves. In any event, the future is ours to make. Most of you probably will have longer time to do that than I will to shape this future, but because as the author says, all of us are really simply our future selves. So I look forward to this class with you, and I suspect that you'll learn a lot of things you had no idea you didn't know.